How's it going, everybody? It's your guy Wardy, and as you can see, we're back at it talking about the Amazons, and we got some news to get into, because as a surprise to absolutely nobody, David Stern's Mets Pobo is not done making moves. And I'm going to go on a limb and tell you right now, folks, he's probably going to make moves every single week until the regular season is done, knowing that there are available options in the waiver wire, via trade, etc. Even if those guys cannot impact you beyond the regular season, because there's a cutoff starting in September now. If you pick anyone up, if you make any acquisitions that aren't already on the 40-man, you can't use them in postseason play. That isn't stopping the Mets from making some very smart and savvy moves to help them get at least a step ahead of others here in the wild card, as they're going to nip at the heels and be in this thing all the way until the very end. And in today's video, we're going to break down the latest acquisition, as Eddy Alvarez has been acquired from the Boston Red Sox. What exactly are the Mets getting here, and what is, in my opinion, a really interesting Swiss Army knife fit that is a far better one than Pablo Reyes, which is exactly why the Mets DFA'd Pablo Reyes today, and instead this being a minor league pickup, a minor league trade, if you will, where you set him right down, as the Mets did with Jose Azocar after claiming him off waivers from the San Diego Padres a couple days ago. The speedy outfielder, check out that video and reaction in case you didn't already, folks. Not the case here in Eddy Alvarez, as he's already with the Mets and will be available off the bench for them in game one of their 3-game set in Toronto beginning tonight against those Blue Jays. So I want to see your initial reactions in the comments down below to the news, and ultimately stay tuned, because we're going to break down now why exactly did David Stearns do this. What are you getting here in Eddy Alvarez? But before I deep dive not only that and all the latest updates here in Mets land, let's talk here very briefly, folks, about our amazing sponsor that you all know very well at BetUS. Because BetUS, yesterday, everybody, we placed our latest two-leg parlay. And if you guys want to get in on the action for the best sports book out there, America's #1, make sure to check them out today by simply going to betus.com.pa, sign up, and use my promo code YouTube150. That is YouTube150 for a 150% bonus on your first 3 deposits up to $2,000. And as you guys can see here, so far so good. Hammered the Lions yesterday there, and they won in overtime against their former quarterback in Matthew Stafford, against who is the now in the future in Jared Goff. Love that matchup. That was great Sunday Night Football. And now Monday Night Football, my Jets fans are all locked in and ready to watch Aaron Rodgers hopefully last more than a couple minutes walking on the field, and I hope the same. And as a Steelers fan who's very neutral with Giants and Jets fandom, I know you guys probably hate me from the 2012 AFC Championship. I get it. 2011, 2012 area. I understand. No less, I'm here to tell you that I'm betting against the Jets today. So what are you going to do, Mets fans and Jets fans? Prove me wrong. Showcase that this team is as good as advertised on paper. We know how amazing that Jets defense is. We know how good Aaron Rodgers is when he's healthy and when he's right. We just haven't seen it all put together yet. So because of that reason, I'm going to go with the team that was in the dance this past year, continues to turn out one of the best regular seasons consistently, and has Brandon Ayuk back, even though I would have loved him on my Steelers here. So that's our two-leg parlay, folks. That is going to be 20 to win us 23.70, so 43.70 total if the Jets do in fact lose. However, I will be happy to be proven wrong should the Jets actually win this one. And I just want to see Rodgers and the Jets have themselves a nice run this year. No one deserves it more than Jets fans. I say that comfortably as a Mets fan who has appreciated fellow Jets fans in the space, even though that I am not actively one of them. But now to get into this one, everybody, let's start with some very unfortunate news, which I'm not at all happy to share, but we need to have this discussion. It has everything to do with Mets legend. Literally, Mr. Met is what I think when I think of Mr. Ed Kranepool, as he sadly passed away today at the age of 79 in his home there in Florida. May he rest in peace, and I'm wishing not only his entire family and friends well, but I'm just thinking about Ed Kranepool and the embodiment of what it meant to be a Met. So let's talk briefly about this before we get into the Eddy Alvarez news, because this is important. Ed Kranepool, for those that don't know or are ill-informed, we're talking about a man that started his Mets career back in the early 1960s at the young age of 17, who grew up a fan, who grew up in the area, and to see that all come full circle when the Mets were just starting out as an organization is one thing, then to go on and have home run heroics, being a part of the amazing Mets that we saw in 1969, winning it all, and having a roughly 20-year MLB career all with the Mets, the longest tenured New York Metropolitan in team history at this point, most games played, plenty of accolades. What can we not say about Ed Kranepool when it comes to gassing this guy up? Because he has been there, he has done that, he has been the face of this organization in various ways. And as we know, over recent years, Ed Kranepool had some health issues, sadly. Thankfully, it looked like he was recovering, had a proper, I think, a transplant, something along those lines was going on. Surgery went well, he was good. We even saw Ed Kranepool back at Mets spring training earlier this year because he lives in the Florida area, at least he did. So I'm thinking about Ed's entire family right now, but I want to spend this also appreciating him for what he is, which is an amazing Met that will always go down in history as one of the best to ever do it, and the embodiment of what it truly meant to be a New York Metropolitan. My father, his family, his extended family, all grew up watching and idolizing Ed Kranepool. Obviously not so much my dad actively, but more so my grandparents and so on and so forth, and they have spoken nothing of glowingly of Ed Kranepool going back to his heyday with the Mets back in the 60s, and we're talking about a roughly 20-year career that in itself deserves a tip of the cap. Ed, I'm sure the Mets are going to honor greatly in some way, shape, or form, either with a patch on their jersey or potentially more of that at the park. All I know is Ed Kranepool, he is sadly no longer with us at the age of 79. And now, folks, let's get into our segment here on Eddy Alvarez, but definitely want to know your thoughts, and if you have any awesome memories or actual interactions with Ed Kranepool, if you could drop them in the comments down below, that'd be very cool. But all right, guys, let's go from talking about Ed Kranepool to now talking about the latest here in Mets land. Paul Blackburn, we saw, was a late scratch for the Mets. Tyler Megill gets a start in game one of this 3-game set. We'll see how he does. I haven't heard too much on the Blackburn front as of now. All I know is that Paul Blackburn is not getting the start. Hopefully it's nothing serious and it's just, a slight setback, maybe a flare-up, or something like that, and he'll be back out there next time around, should the Mets not have him start in any of the games this series. With Sevy and Manaea slated to pitch, no reason to mess up what is going right there for both of them respectfully. So that's the latest there on the pitching front, folks. So let's talk all about what the Mets got here in Mr. Eddy Alvarez, because they acquired him today from the Boston Red Sox. And for those that don't know Eddy Alvarez, let me enlighten you
swing and a fly.
Oh, I actually apologize. I did not mean to have the audio playing right there. But Eddy Alvarez, a 34-year-old infield and outfield option, brings a really interesting element now to the Mets. What you're getting in Alvarez is a guy who had 18 home runs, 77 RBIs, and roughly 20 stolen bags in over 100 games at the AAA level this year for the Boston Red Sox minor league affiliate, a 247 average, at 812 OPS. This is the same guy who has MLB experience going back to 2022 with the LA Dodgers and the previous couple seasons there in spurts with the Miami Marlins. If you guys remember Eddy Alvarez, when he had a couple hits during the Mets throughout his span there in Miami, had some success with the Dodgers. But what are you getting in Eddy Alvarez that is more appealing per se than Pablo Reyes, which is why the Mets did not only acquire him, but ultimately called him up and already DFA'd Pablo Reyes? It's because you're getting an actual infield and outfield option here. Yes, Reyes, you can throw in the outfield if you want, even though you don't want that. Alvarez has more position versatility. The guy's played every single position this year for the most part, not named catcher. He's pitched at the minor league level. He has played third base, shortstop, second, first, all the outfield configuration. Simply play. It doesn't matter where you put Eddy Alvarez, he's going to be perfectly fine and perfectly comfortable. Yes, he's going to be proficient in one area over another, which I'm sure goes in hand with the spots that he was best at to start his career. But why does David Stearns and the Mets like this acquisition? Well, with Jeff McNeil now down with injury for the rest of the regular season, you are down not only a backup infield option, but you also are down now another outfield option. And even with the call-up of DJ Stewart, that I think most of us were head-scratching, including myself, because we know at absolute best what DJ provides, we know at absolute worst what DJ provides, and all that leads me to the lack of versatility, the lack of base running, more of a standalone DH, a guy that many should not be throwing out in the corner outfield the way he did when DJ first got the call for JD Martinez being on the paternity list, which made no sense in my opinion. Fast forward, DJ Stewart is still actively with the team, and now we have here the latest in Eddy Alvarez, and this is your base stealing threat late in ball game. This is a guy that you can come in as a defensive replacement should you want to for, say, a Mark Vientos, or potentially even for a Starling Marte in right field, because look, Jesse Winker, I love Jesse in that bat, as defense hasn't been a great problem. However, when you look at the outfield configuration for the Mets, out of their current outfielders, there's only 3 that I trust to actually play defense. That's Harrison Bader, that's Tyrone Taylor, and that's Brandon Nimmo. When I look at Jesse Winker, when I look at Starling Marte, and surely when I look at DJ Stewart, I see a whole lot of nothing on the defensive end. I see offensive upside, and that's pretty much that for the most part. So at least what you're getting here in Alvarez is that defensive versatility that can play all over the place, has great speed on the bags. If you actually look a little bit about Eddy Alvarez's history, because I'm going to share with you guys some comments that he made with the media pregame today. This is also a former Olympian in speed skating, funny enough. So he has always had great legs and great feet to bolster on the base pass, to steal bags, and he's a guy that can certainly come in as a more versatile, a Swiss Army knife option with MLB experience, and one that the Mets are far more willing to give very limited playing time versus a top prospect in Luis Angel Acuna, where they could hurt his development. Or even to an extent in Drew Gilbert, as great as he's been tearing the cover off the ball this past month, he's still not a guy that they're are comfortable calling up to this point for understandably so reasons. So what does that leave us with? Eddy Alvarez is everything that Pablo Reyes isn't in the sense of true versatility beyond what Reyes can give you. Yes, Reyes, a former Boston Red Sox who had some heroics for them last season, funny enough, and is a base stealing threat, clearly is not enough to sway Carlos Mendoza and David Stearns to warrant him on the roster here over Eddy Alvarez. So that goes in hand with why they made their decision. And speaking of Eddy, let's hear from the horse's mouth himself on what he had to say in regards to now being acquired by the Mets and what this means for him going forward.
What's it mean to you to jump into this situation with this team?
Oh, this is incredible. This is, what feels like what I was meant for. I love this kind of baseball. I've always thought of myself as a playoff baseball player. Guy that can bunt guys over, hit and run, and put a good at bat. So the fact that this organization saw something to me playing in AAA, so it gives me confidence, and I'm going to do everything in my power to play at the best of my ability to help this club, this final push.
Now, listen, I'm not going to go the lengths and say the Mets just acquired Jose Iglesias 2.0 because that would be such a foolish thing to say. However, I will tell you that to get a guy who goes from being on a Boston Red Sox team in their farm where he was given no opportunity, wasn't getting anywhere this year, and the Red Sox surely aren't going anywhere in the playoffs at this rate. The Mets are right in the thick of things, so now he has a new fire. Getting the call is another thing, too, because this was not even a guy that was actively in the major leagues this season, so to get the call after just being acquired shows how much David Stearns sees upside here in Alvarez, even if that isn't a very limited role as just a pinch runner coming in a bunt, just for the funnies, if you will, that the Mets fundamentally haven't done well this season. If there's one thing that we can critique on the offensive end, when they've had their lows, they have definitely struggled at times to just have a proper bunt down. It feels like since Tomas Nido left the organization for Chicago, no one on God's green earth in this lab knows how to properly lay down and bunt. If they do, they do it at the most improper time where it doesn't make sense. Like, why is Jesse Winker bunting yesterday? Doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever, yet I digress. Here what we have in Alvarez is a guy that is willing to take the bat out of his hands because he knows his legs are most clutch and are most important in certain high leverage situations late in ball game should he come in to squeeze or bring in a run, to be a pinch runner himself to try to squeeze in a run from third. However, it's going to be Eddy Alvarez, juiced up, excited to be here with the Mets, and this is what he had to say on the fact that he is a two-sport athlete, knowing that he's also a former Olympian.
I make a little run for best spandex wearing athlete in the room. Maybe. I don't know. Pete Alonso might have me on that one too.
That's hilarious. And for those that don't know, Eddy Alvarez has a great personality just like Jose Iglesias. And the reason why I mentioned Jose is because Jose hadn't been given an opportunity the past couple years. Now that he's finally given an opportunity by the Mets, he absolutely takes advantage of it. I'm not expecting the same heroics here with Alvarez, but to a lesser degree, he might just be exactly what this Mets team could need as a Swiss Army knife option down the stretch heading into postseason play. I'm very interested and excited to see how that's going to fare for him. Yes, we also saw the news there that Kumar Rocker did get the call from the Texas Rangers. So funny enough, him, DeGrom, and Scherzer are all going to be pitching the rotation over the next week or so for the Texas Rangers, and all which are no longer New York Metropolitans. Imagine telling Mets fans that a couple years ago when we were first covering us drafting Kumar Rocker before that fell through and everything in between. I don't think he's going to hold up as a starter with his health issues right now, but I wish him well. I'm curious to see how he's going to do there. But this is what I had to say here on Alvarez, folks. Earlier, I was excited to get that video out. There was one more thing that I did want to mention to each and every one of you. Want to make sure that I don't miss this whatsoever, because we talked about Alvarez as his implementation. This is what I also want to show you where the fun stuff comes in with someone like Eddy and his personality. I want to shout out my guy Paul, as Paul linked this down below in this original tweet from Michael Mayer. Paul, great follow, who's also a Boston Red Sox area native Mets fan, I believe. And this is Eddy Alvarez back in 2023 for the Brewers. So there's a connection with David Stearns right there, in case you were trying to figure that out as well. A former David Stearns guy in the Milwaukee Brewers organization. And this is him messing around on speed skates as a former Olympian.
Too fast.
that man is now in the Mets clubhouse. If that doesn't get you hyped up, I don't know what does. But in all seriousness, thank you all so much for watching. That is the latest Mets moves here in Metsland. They have acquired Eddy Alvarez. They have DFA'd Pablo Reyes. Paul Blackburn is not getting the start there in Toronto for Game 1. And Ed Kranepool is sadly no longer with us. Thank you guys all so much for watching. Stay tuned for our post-game coverage immediately after tonight's Game 1. Hopefully victory against those Blue Jays. Until then, have a fantastic rest of your night, day, evening, whenever you're watching this. And this is your guy, Wardy, signing out. Let's go Mets, baby. Peace.